and full course yellow is deployed. Full course yellow is deployed.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of In Pit Lane's Full Course Yellow, our weekly get-together, a bit of a chat amongst friends about the wonderful world of motorsport and all things besides. Well, another big week. Congratulations to our own Oscar Piastri for his win in the Chinese Grand Prix over the weekend. A dominant performance, really, when you have a look at it. Led from the start, led all the way. Wasn't the most exciting race in the world, let's face it, but probably the interest came after the race with the disqualification of both Ferraris and one of the Alpines. So let's find out what's been happening around the world. Also, we got some supercar news coming up. GT Championship, the Australian GT World Challenge is just around the corner as well. They had a media day yesterday down at Phillip Island. Would have been down there to take some photos if I'd have known anything about it. But it looks like that's another mailing list that we've been taken off of. So. Couldn't get down there, unfortunately. Otherwise, probably would have taken a run down there to get some shots, to get a bit of stock footage, and to talk to a few drivers. But never mind. It's better that we keep these things a secret between ourselves. Wouldn't want the public getting involved. Let's find out about what's happening tonight. It's a small but quality field tonight. Joining us on the program, our Formula One tragic and floor manager, Mr. Peter Johnson, and the King of Queensland himself, Mark Jones. Good evening, guys.
Hello, Brett. Hello, Mark.
Mark, you're still on mute. He's doing his justly famous impersonation of Harpo Marx at the moment. Mark, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. And a very good evening to the both of you, and hope you are as fine as I am right at the second.
And you are very loud as well, by the way. I don't know whether you...
I shall volume myself.
There, but if you could volume just a little bit, just a touch, we'll take it down from there. There we go. We'll give... We'll find out... We'll just change our banner down here to our Formula One news and all the rest of it. If I can just find a way of doing that, I'll just hide that, and then now why isn't that doing?
You had it before.
There we go. In Pit Lane news. Oh,
there we go. There it is. It's not coming up on my screen here, but it is coming off down the bottom. So
I can see it.
There you go. Yep, there you go. So I'll close that, and away we go. Okay, yes, well, congratulations, as we said, to our mate, Mr. Oscar Piastri, Melbourne's own, and did a great performance, dominating from pole all the way through. So first of all, Pete, what did you think of it all in terms of the weekend and particularly the main race? We'll get on to Lewis winning the sprint race as well. That was pretty significant, but first win for Ferrari, especially in light of what happened to them after the main race. But how did you see the race?
Well, yes, it wasn't the most exciting race, but I personally I don't think China ever is really that exciting, unless there's water. But it was exciting from the point of view of Australians, I guess. Just on the disqualification, the Ferrari put out a statement saying that on Charles Leclerc's car, I think, they elected to do a one-stop strategy, and that caused the tyres to degrade more, and therefore that caused the car to be underweight. If you're going to get penalised for having strategy, then what's the point of having a strategy in the race? You may as well just mandate however many pit stops you have to have in a race, and that's it. No questions asked.
I suppose that's the thing that they take the risk at, because we know that at the end of the race they always say to all the drivers, pick up plenty of rubber. Because it is a fine margin that they're working under. I mean, and obviously it wasn't. He didn't pick up enough rubber, so that was obviously the problem for Charles. But it was a bad weekend, a bad Sunday for them after the success of the sprint race and Lewis Hamilton's win. It was like, well, this is this is going to be the big story for the weekend. Like Ferrari and possibly another Grand Prix win for Lewis, and perhaps even heading towards that record-breaking world championship. And it all fell into a heap. I mean, the interesting thing was, I mean, Charles was clearly faster than Lewis, and yet he had damage to his car. And it's funny that every time you see that, where they knock off one of these little winglets or end plates or something like that, it's like, well, this is going to cause massive problems now. And usually doesn't somehow. I think sometimes some of the aerodynamicists sit there and go, oh, they're going to find out now that this is a complete wank.
Oh dear, no, you can't say that. You can't say that. Aerodynamics is see, Adrian over here, he says that aerodynamics is the best thing ever, and we've got to keep perpetuating that. Otherwise, we're all out of a job.
Yeah, I mean, the argument that they would use in terms of the fact that it contributed to increased tyre wear and made it harder, would have made it much harder for him to go past anybody. But the car seemed to handle okay with despite the problems. And they decided not to change the front wing because they were going to lose more time than they gained. So that was that was their thing, but. Certainly, another McLaren 1-2. I think that what it also showed. What I like about it is what I sort of said. Like just recently, I think that the fact that I think that Oscar's going to win a world championship before Lando, and it could even be this year, because I just think he's got a better attitude. I just think if you listen to him at the end of the race, he's totally in control. He sounds to me more like Max or Lewis. To someone who's really experienced, he's not sort of yes, I won. It's like no, I've got a job to do. My job is to win races. You've given me a car that's good enough to win races. I'm happy. I'm delighted. But hey, this is my job.
Well, when he got pole, he actually said, I just screamed in my helmet. And then once he'd done that, he was talking on the radio quite calmly and things. So he got it out of his system privately. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he seems to be much in. I think he's more in control, and I don't think he's going to be throwing hissy fits. And I've got a feeling that if things start going badly for Lando at some stage, Lando's going to start stomping his feet a little bit and getting very upset.
He was already sort of doing that. He was already started to get a bit tetchy during the race, and admittedly he did have a brake problem, but he was starting to get. Before that, he was starting to get a little bit restless.
Let's see, a calm and controlled McLaren driver partnered with an excitable and emotional McLaren driver. We've seen that before, I think.
Yes, it's worked in the past. Why not run through it again?
But let's just clean the polish on those MP4 cars from 1988. They seem to be pretty impressive, and they're 1.5 litre V6s too. So
yes. So so that's interesting. Yeah. The other interesting thing, of course, is down the back. Jack Doohan did quite a good job. I mean, didn't set the world on fire, but he finished the race. He picked up, like a fairly strong position. Didn't do anything
aided
silly.
By 3 disqualifications, of course.
Aided, of course, yes, by the three disqualifications. But nonetheless, I think he did an okay job. It's interesting. I mean, he was the one that before the season it was like, oh, Jack Doohan's in trouble. Jack Doohan's not going to last the season. Colapinto is going to. Now it's like we're 2 races in. It's like, oh, Lawson's gone. That's it. That's the end of him.
The focus. You go, Pete.
Sorry. I think in both cases it's a case of senile old men flying kites.
Well, old men like flying kites. I mean, flying kites is fun. But it's relatively safe to do as long as you don't have too big a kite. In which case you get dragged off your feet and you can break something, but break a hip or something. But yeah, I think that obviously the media are pumping it up as well. The interesting thing was, I don't know whether you guys saw it. Melbourne and Australian comedian or alleged comedian Dave Hughes jumped onto
No, I
jumped
didn't see
on.
that.
Yeah, he jumped online on his Facebook page and sort of basically paid out on the British commentators and saying Oscar's just won. They hardly mention him at all, and all they can talk about is bloody Lando, bloody Norris. I mean, what about talking about the guy from Australia who won the bloody thing? And he wasn't happy. So
Welcome to the
Well,
world of those that watch the races regularly, Dave.
to
yeah,
be to be fair, there wasn't really a lot to be said about Oscar other than, yep, he's in front.
and he stayed in
Gap's
front.
getting bigger. He stayed in front. He's doing an exceptional job, and nobody's near him. So let's have a look where. Oh, hello. Here's Lando's in trouble here. His pit stop went a bit long. He's dropped down the field a position or two, and now he's completely run out of brakes with a couple of laps to go. So yeah, to be fair, there was a lot more happening with Lando.
It's interesting that Ferrari have come out and also had a go at the Formula One coverage, and they've said, like quite rightly that like they're very selective with what they put to air in terms
Radio.
of the driver radio, and they sort of saying, look, there's clearly an agenda to sort of as they say, sort of Netflix style, sort of to try and create controversy that isn't there. I must admit, Charles Leclerc is turning into sort of the new Valtteri Bottas or
And
Kimi
Yuki.
Raikkonen or Yuki, because he's just
Understated humour.
yeah, he's very dry, and I mean, obviously the line in Melbourne was a classic, but he came up with another couple there. He just seems to be sort of don't just leave me alone and let me get on with
Can,
it. All right?
can we ask you not to ride over the curbs? No.
No, yes.
I'm wondering if venting all that water out of the car might have contributed to the car being underweight.
Well, who knows? It's
Just on Frederick Vasseur and complaining about the coverage, he said that yes, they did predominantly have fairly one-sided messages, but he said they didn't pick up when Lewis said Lewis said that I'm actually holding up Leclerc, and I heard it on that
yeah.
coverage.
Yeah,
So
he did. I don't know whether he was talking specifically about the Sky coverage, but Martin Brundle, I think it was one of the guys, but certainly the commentary did say that that message came from Lewis originally, saying, look, if I'm getting in his road, I'll get out of the road if he's faster. If he's faster, I mean, as he said, he was just waiting to the point where he was quick, close enough to him that Lewis could sort of let him pass without sort of compromising his speed and race. So yeah, it definitely was Lewis's call originally. So yeah, that was they didn't put the original radio bit to air, but it was certainly mentioned by the commentary. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
actually heard Lewis say it. I actually heard Lewis say, "I'm holding him up."
okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think I
so
remember that as well, Peter. Yeah, the
yeah,
that little three-tone jingle that they use to
the
announce a bit of radio coming in,
yeah,
and then yeah, and Lewis, Sir Lewis, saying, "Look, we may have to, yeah." So,
yeah.
but maybe that's the bit that Ferrari is a bit like, because it's because Lewis has then gotten quite a bit more airtime than just about everybody else in the race after that, or at least in terms of his own commentary. That that has. I guess that's not quite sure what. No, yeah, it's that Lewis has been slightly, or rather, Ferrari want to put out that Lewis was misrepresented
Yeah,
by his, shall we say,
radio.
outsized role in the race.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, well, it was obviously apart from it was great to see Lewis win on the Saturday. I mean, it
Mm.
certainly gave sort of got plenty of media attention around the world and sort of got everyone's hopes up that hang on, perhaps 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 he is going to be fast enough, and perhaps Ferrari's going to be fast enough. So it's only early, and I mean we're only into the second round at this stage. It is looking like a McLaren sort of domination, but
Well,
we're
two
only
very different racetracks, mind you,
yeah.
and with
and
and
one with an anomaly in that there was rain and
Right, yeah,
water
yeah.
and yeah, yeah,
It'll be interesting to see how things go at Suzuka. I would be suspecting because the other team that's done really well without sort of like threatening a win is Williams. I would think that at Suzuka, Williams, with their straight line speed and their aerodynamics and all the rest of it, could be quite a
yeah.
surprise. And once again, Alex Albon is sort of showing his talent again. He's I think he's a very underrated driver. He's put in some really good performances.
Yeah.
indeed, yeah, and it's kind of underlines a little bit how perhaps that Sonoda has been like Sonoda is being underrated by everybody, and a bit unjustly so, because Carlos Sainz has joined the team, a guy who was winning races with Ferrari last year, and he's not quite. I mean, he's been competitive, but not over a full race distance compared to Albon. Albon has been continuing to show. Sorry, I mentioned the wrong driver there at one point, didn't I? I said Sonoda was in the Williams, but no. But actually, Sonoda is definitely a driver to watch for the Japanese Grand Prix, of course, the Japanese driver in the Honda powered race car. So that's and we expect that the Red Bulls and the Racing Bulls can. There are more aerodynamic favoured car, at least traditionally. So we can look forward to perhaps a stellar performance from Sonoda coming up. It's been a little while. Has a Japanese driver ever been on the podium in the home race? I mean, Aguri Suzuki did it way back.
Way back,
He
yeah, back
popped
in
up
the
in late '80s, very
And I
late
think
'80s,
I think
or
I don't
possibly
know for
19,
sure.
1990. Actually, yeah, it would
Yeah.
have been. Yeah.
I think Satoru Nakajima, but I'm not really sure. I think he did.
No, his career best was a fourth. He had a couple of
Okay,
fourth places, but
okay.
never actually made the top three.
yeah. So
But
yeah,
yeah,
I'm not sure. I remember going back to the back into the '70s. There was sort of where you had sort of a one-off drive and a one-off car, and it was a wet Mount Fuji race, and there was a Japanese driver and car combination did very well. I forget what it was now. I can see it in my
I think it
mind's
was one
eye
of
of
the
what.
yeah, it was one of the two semi-regular Bathurst Nissan drivers, Masahiro Hasemi or Kazuyoshi Hoshino, who were both in that Japanese Grand Prix.
Yeah, so they certainly have done well in the past. Obviously, the Japanese media and all of the amongst the people who are putting like a lot of pressure on Liam, of course, because they're sort of saying that he's had a couple of opportunities, and wouldn't it be an ideal chance now to get to get Yuki into for his home Grand Prix, and just imagine the hype that it would
I,
bring, and Honda are very are obviously very keen to make that happen, but I can't. It's not going to happen. And I
no,
think,
and
and
I,
the other thing is, it's not as if it doesn't it doesn't sort of matter at this stage until sort of around halfway. As long as long as Lawson's not, he made a mistake in Melbourne, but then when
so
under
did
the
everybody
conditions,
else.
yeah, so did a lot of other people. He got it home. he wasn't all that fast, but yes, I mean, it's only, when you look at it, it's his second race in that car. Let's see how he goes over the next sort of. If he gets to about, I think once they get back to Europe and they get into sort of, towards the break, they might start. If he's still way down the back of the field, I think at that stage they might start looking for alternatives. And the interesting thing is that some people are saying the alternative could actually be Colapinto. That because the deal that he's got at the moment is
He can be
basically
farmed out.
yeah, he can be farmed out. It's a sort of a borrowed thing from Williams. It's not.
I mean, that's not unusual. Williams has frequently um, had contract deals going where they would lend their drivers. Most famously, I think Jenson Button was one who spent a year or two at Benetton while under a Williams contract. Um, but yeah,
Actually,
that's
David Jones saying that he's back from Shanghai right back Monday morning. So yeah, David, if you've got any inside any sort of impressions from the weekend that you can pass on to us, yeah, by all means, pop them up there. Jared's also saying that Red Bull should have signed Carlos Sainz. Had a full season with Checo struggling. Lawson needed a year in Racing Bull visa.
well.
Um,
I think. I think we've got a little bit something to look forward to with Lawson heading into the Japanese Grand Prix. Suzuka is a circuit he knows well, whereas that was his first time at
yeah,
Albert Park, and I'm not sure that he's done Shanghai before either.
I don't think he
He
So,
hasn't.
has.
He hasn't. They
so
said he hadn't.
yeah, so well, yeah,
Yeah.
Suzuka, yeah, box
Yeah.
checked several times for Lim. So yeah, he's quite a bit of racing in Japan. So yeah, it's on a track that he knows well, and on a track that rewards drivers. Uh, the Suzuka circuit, like one of the best known driver circuits. Yeah, if I think we can draw a lot more about how the Lawson season will pan out from this round coming in a week and a half's time.
And I think
I
Lawson's
think.
pretty confident as well because of that very reason. I mean, because Yuki had sort of had a go at him in the media, and Lawson sort of bit back and said, "Yeah, I mean, I've raced Yuki in a number of other categories over the years, and I've beaten him every time." So
And I think the Red Bull car, the Red Bull proper car, is not the car that it has been. Because I think Max is only at this stage only going for consistency, just collecting points. He's not really going for the wins at this
well,
stage.
they've already
So
said they're going to make some big changes to try and make the car a lot more drivable for both drivers. They're just saying that at the moment it's really just Max's talent that's dragging. He's muscling it into position, whereas yeah. So David also saying the way the draw is for this year, we can get to go to other tracks in our area. We're getting sort of more
Hmm.
like China, Japan. If they do end up going to Thailand, that would be a really good one to head to at some stage. If they get over there, I'd like to go to Thailand for some racing there anyway. The Thailand race series, the Super Series over there, is going absolute gangbusters at the moment. So, and that's usually live on their YouTube channel as well. So when that starts up, it's worth watching because the racing's really good, the field's good, good GT fields, good Trans Am fields,
Mhm.
as we've seen
Yep.
here in Australia as well. I mean, I suppose we could get on to that before we wrap up the Grand Prix. Any other news or anything else that we need to talk about?
not about the Grand Prix, no.
No,
The Formula
Formula One
One.
was, yeah. I mean, look, just to underline Oscar Piastri and put some exclamation marks on the end, and that's basically the entire review of the Chinese Grand Prix.
That's pretty much it as well. As Paul pointed out, Singapore's close as well. Singapore, of
Mm.
course, getting up to Singapore on that weekend and staying there is pretty bloody expensive. But yeah, it is. It's only it's what it's. I think it's less than 10 hours 10 hours away. It's about an 8-hour flight, so if you can get up there and you can get some affordable accommodation and, of course, a ticket, it's probably not a bad one to go to as well. And of course, you get the opportunity of seeing them at night, which is sort of pretty unique around here. So yeah, I think that was. I do know that people. I know that in the days of Malaysia, that there were people, particularly obviously people in Western Australia, but even South Australia, the Northern Territory, North Queensland, and the like. It was much cheaper and much more and
Yes.
much easier for them to go to Malaysia than it was talking to people over there. It was like they just said, well, the tickets are so much cheaper and the accommodation is so much cheaper, the food's so much cheaper. Really, I mean, even if you factor in the cost of, and they were, some of the Perth people were saying, well, and the airfare was even cheaper. It was much cheaper to fly from Perth to Kuala Lumpur than it was to fly from Perth to Melbourne. So,
Mind you, like if you're coming from Tasmania, there's no such thing as a cheap airfare, even to Melbourne. Hi
no,
to Tassie
well,
relatives. But yeah.
yeah, if you've got to get in early enough, and it's got to be on because I was actually looking at going down there, during the break at some stage or later on in the year, just to have a look around. Because as I think I said last week, I mean, like the only, really for the past 3 or 4 years, the only part of Tasmania I've actually seen has been Baskerville Raceway, and a very nice part of the world it is too. I would highly recommend going down there, but I wouldn't mind sort of just going down there and playing tourist for a few days and going to MoMA and going to the Salamanca markets and all those
Longford.
sort of things down there. So if you get in early enough, you can get some. You can get pretty. But of course, I'm thinking, of course, from here, and of course, you're about as far away as you can get. So I imagine it's
Oh, it's
yeah.
not Darwin, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's expensive. I mean, yeah, like I said, same thing. Went up to Darwin. All I saw was Hidden Valley. Would like to go up there and have a look. One. I've priced it a couple of times, and it's like ridiculously expensive. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
David saying the reason he went was because of the visa requirements. You get 30 days without a visa. So yeah, so that makes life life a lot easier. When we went to Mongolia, I mean, we had to organise a visa really quickly. I mean, literally, like, because we were invited on the Monday, and we left on Thursday, so we had to pay quite a bit of money to get that through. But they did get it through very quickly. There was no sort of major
Sorry.
problems in getting it, but yeah, to have that 30 days without a visa would be very good. As Dave said, if COVID hadn't happened, we would have had the Vietnam Grand Prix. I don't know whether we would have actually.
No,
Yeah, because it hasn't
there
happened
was a
in the
problem.
intervening time.
No, there was a problem with the construction of it.
Yeah, there was all sorts of problems, and apparently there's a couple of things on YouTube. There's a guy who sort of went to the track and walked around and gives the whole history from a local perspective of sort of what happened, and it was a bit like sort of the Malaysian supercar race. It was like lots of people were talking about this is going to happen and that was going to happen, and then the relevant people in government were going, I'm sorry, what? First we've heard about it. Because we had that. I know it annoyed supercars because they were running sort of stories here about how wonderful it was going, and we had one of our crew members who speaks who speaks fluent Malaysian, and he was getting Malaysian language newspapers sent to him, basically saying but the stories were basically Australian media keep talking about this supercar race through the streets of Kuala Lumpur. Yet nobody knows anything about it, and the people involved are all really dodgy. speaking
It's
of speaking of
hardly.
dodgy bids, Sydney looking for a Grand Prix bid, second race. Yeah, I don't think Sydney. I mean, you can't get Sydney people to go to any bloody thing. I mean, getting them. Perhaps if it was a street race, I mean, Bernie Eccleston always said that his ultimate Grand Prix, television shot would be it would be Formula One cars going over the Harbour Bridge with the Sydney Opera House in the background, preferably at night. Um, that
Oh
was
yeah,
his
loop it
great
around
dream.
with
But
the yeah, loop it around with the tunnel to get the to get the cars back across to the other side of the harbour again. But mind you, I'm not quite sure how you could pull that off without having chicanes on both the bridge and on the tunnel, or if you're using both lanes
yeah,
of the both
I
directions
think the
of
problem
traffic on the
was
bridge.
that
Yeah,
they drew up a few sort of potential tracks around the rocks and places like that, and all of them were going to cause absolute traffic chaos for a period of like 4 to 6 weeks. That because Sydney's traffic is insane at the best of times. It's so
yeah.
hard to get around the joint. I mean, the streets are so bloody narrow, and you can find yourself literally sort of 10 metres away from the place you want to go. I remember I remember after one Bathurst 12 hour returning a rental car to a place, and I went to where I was returning the car to, and I could see it. It was literally like 20 metres away, and I ended up ringing. I said, "How the hell do I get you? I'm over the other side of the road. How the hell do I get back and turn around?" I had a couple of attempts, and they went, "Oh, okay, you've approached from such and such. Yeah, no, you're just going to have to drive up about 8 kilometres." So I'm literally, and I was running late. So in the end, I said, "I'm parking it across the road. I'm leaving the keys in it, and I'm going. So goodbye." Never
Oh,
heard
bloody
anything
hell.
about it. So yeah, so obviously, but it was a pain it can be an absolute pain in the ass getting around the joint. So yeah, I can't see it.
Hmm.
But tell you what we
Well, I
mentioned
mean, apart
Tasmania
from any,
is
I'm just thinking like they've got countries queuing up all over the world to try to get into Formula One. They're not going to give
yeah,
Australia two races.
two. No,
No.
no,
It's a
you
pipe
wouldn't think
dream.
so. But speaking of Tasmania, as we were before, did anyone watch the Trans Am on the weekend? Boy, that was fun and games, and what a sight that was! 32 cars, and Todd
Oh,
Hazelwood absolutely dominating the weekend. But yeah, lots of some big some big accidents and some good racing, and looked like a really good weekend.
yeah, a few broken cars there as well. Like
Yeah.
they were certainly pushing the envelope on on these TA2 cars. They're great cars, and yeah, Simmons Plains is a great circuit for them. I think with those two long straights to stretch those long V8 legs in the TA2s, and certainly got some good racing out of that. And but yeah, of course, race four, which I haven't seen yet. I caught up on race three at lunchtime at work today. But race four, um, went everything went sideways and then up and down, and then um, I've never seen a car tied in knots before, but I think they tried pretty hard in that race four start. Yeah.
It was chaos. I mean, just to look at it, I mean, because yeah, they started as it's a very strange start finish line at the best because it goes
Mm.
sort of round the corner, and suddenly you've got 32 cars coming around, even with a rolling start, and they were so far. The field was so big, they were so far behind. Um, yeah, it was a wonder that they didn't have even more chaos there. But Todd Hazelwood, put in a great performance. So of course James Moffat was. Had a bad start to the because he was leading the first race and then had problems with and a really unlikely problem with a rear axle. I mean, those things are usually pretty bulletproof.
Mm.
They've got the I think the modified sort of Ford 9-inch rear axle and diff on at the back of them, so it's basically a truck axle, and to have them brake like that, but it shows sort of that about the torque and the stress that goes through them, like getting out of that hairpin and pulling up that long back straight. I've never actually been to Simmons Plains, but I know Melissa drove it a few times and she loved it. She said it's a great track to drive. Said it was a real challenge, and she really loved that hairpin. She
Yeah, I
said because
love.
she said if you get it right, it's magic. So yeah, it's really
Yeah,
good.
you dropping you're dropping 2 stories. It's like
Yeah.
falling down the corkscrew at Laguna Seca. That's the level of plunge that it takes. So it's not just a tight left-hander.
Well, that's the thing. It's a bit like down the other end at Baskerville. It's like that. You've got no idea until you get there and you actually go onto the back straight and look up that hill, and you go like, "Oh my God, this is! I wasn't expecting this." It really is a lot steeper and a lot more sort of elevation changes than you're actually expecting. So it once again, it's a really good. They're really blessed. They've got a couple of really good circuits. The interesting thing is, I saw somebody post online about crowd was a bit disappointing, and then somebody said, oh yeah, well mine like. That's because they've got it up at Simmons Play. They've always put the supercar. They should have run it at Baskerville because it'd be closer to Hobart, and because we're miles away. And I thought, actually, how long does it take to get from Simmons Plains to Baskerville? It's about 90 minutes or so. I think it's not far at all. But you
Yeah.
would think it was about a 4-hour drive the way they carry on sometimes.
Yeah, mind you, though, Baskervilles is unfortunately it's of all of Australia's racetracks, it is the shortest, and so on that base, and 1.2k, I think the entire lap. I mean, it's a gorgeous track, a great driver track, in a natural amphitheatre. You've got uh, connections to like how what Amaru was like back in its day, but it is still it is that it's less than a mile in the old money. So
Yeah, it
it's
is. It is very short, but that means it produces fantastic. I've
yeah,
always said, like
but
with the historics, I would love to see a Formula Atlantic Pacific, a dedicated Formula Atlantic Pacific race there. I mean, they have had Formula 5000s there. They've had the historic sports
sports
sedans and the
sedan.
Group C cars, but to
Well, and
have
they
a
had
field
sports
of
sedan championship back when sports sedans were
oh
at their
yeah.
peak.
Well, they had the Baskerville 10,000, which was and you had Moffat and Thompson, McCormick, all of the big stars turned up for it, and there's footage of that online. If you have a look on YouTube, there are sort of Frank Gardner in the Corvair ran there once. Well, it might have been Alan Grice actually driving it to the Corvair. I know the Corvair race
Yeah.
there. But yeah, it's a great, just a great little track. And this year for the Baskerville Historics, they're running because they've got a lot of old Holdens down there, so they're running a special race just for 48 215 and FJ Holdens of different
Oh,
persuasions. They believed last year when I was talking to the guys down there, they believe they will have 40 of them on the grid. Yeah.
I mean, just the mind boggles at fitting 40 cars onto Baskerville at the all at once. It's the like the 20th row of the grid will end up being only 2 meters in front of the pole line. But anyway,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I'll
but no,
certainly
the
go down. They'll
that's
certainly go round the corner and possibly onto the back straight. Well, it's a big sweeping corner. The thing is, as you say, it is short, but it's not. It's not like a Calder Park or the original Winton short. As you say, the closest thing would be that I've said would have been Amaru. I don't remember. I didn't see any racing from Hume Weir. I've heard a few people say it's got a little bit in common with Hume Weir, but either way, it's actually quite a fast track because there's big sweeping corners around most of the track. So it's a very good track, and of course, so you got that big push up the hill. So for cars with a bit of torque, a bit of power for V8s, it's actually surprisingly more of a V8 circuit. But the idea of having sort of 40 sort of early model Holdens on the grid, and I think this year as well the historic sports sedans are going back again. So yeah, it'll be another amazing event. And if you get the opportunity, I mean, like you really need to sort of book now in terms if you want to get sort of cheaper flights down there or. And make a week of it. Head down on if you, head down over on the boat on the ferry and jump off and do what a few people did. I know Gary Roberts, the Victorian sports sedan driver, basically went down there with his wife. They went down sort of the week before, weekend before, and just had a very gentle drive down through, went to all the wineries, went to all the tourist spots, all of the natural attractions that Tasmania has to offer, and all of those great roads that they use for
Oh yeah,
Targa.
Tasmania roads. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and they had a ball. They loved it. I mean, like Gary was saying, he said, the wife has had an absolute ball as much as he had. I mean, it was basically, he was waiting to get to the racetrack, but in the meantime, they both had a terrific time heading down there. So yeah, so
I remember one year I went down for the Simmons Plains touring car round, and in the in the week ahead of that, I just did the drive over the hills and down into Queenstown on that blasted heath that with those spooky corners and what have you, and that was in the wet with a front wheel drive Pintara wagon with all kinds of odd weight distribution, but that was a fun experience.
yeah, of course,
Not so much when the car broke down, but anyway.
Queenstown, of course, famous for the football ground without any actual grass on it.
Oh yeah.
It's an all gravel football because of the mining that was done there and the sulphur. Basically, nothing grew in the place. It was incredibly polluted, the whole area, but it was amazing. My memory of Queenstown, I went down with the school back. I was 13, 14 years old. Went down for a school excursion, and we were told not to go out that night. And as is my wont, and I've done this a few times, I of course decided not to. And there was nothing there, but there was a small cinema in the place, and they had Monty Python's and the Holy
Oh.
Grail showing, and I ended up in the I ended up there with a bunch of sort of locals watching Monty Python and the Holy Grail in Queenstown, and had a terrific night.
And and you had a set of coconuts for when you got back to your room
Yes,
later that evening.
yes. So that's my memory of Queenstown, but. Yeah, great thing. But Trans Am going really well at the moment, and of course for the next round, they're combining it with the TA2 series, and it's going to be an even
Ah,
larger field. And they're talking
right.
about possibly sort of 50 cars or more
I know.
lining up for that particular race. So they've released the schedule for the 6 hour. Looks a really fun weekend to go to. If you could, I must admit, I looked at it the other day, and if my health was better, both sort of physically and financially, I'd certainly like to go up there and camp up there, and because I think there's unlike the 12 hour, it's far from sold out in terms of camping. You can still get camping for it's about $100, a bit over, or $120, I think, for the 4 days. So if you want a good break at Easter time and you feel like a bit of a drive, and we've got a break from the new show from the tune up, and I went, I could leave on Thursday morning, I could get there Good
Oh,
Friday, and it'd be a good. Then I'd have plenty of time to drive back, and but yeah, nah, the car's not going to make it, and probably even more, so I'm not going to make it either. So yeah, won't get there, but it is going to be extensively covered. Have extensive coverage on SBS and online as well. So we won't miss any of the action. John Bowe announced today driving in a Mustang with Bryden Wilmington.
beautiful.
So that's going to be great. I know John was very keen. He really he loves the 6 hour. John Hindhoff. I mean, he's said many times that if he could get the weekend off and he could come, that's the race he would love to do. He said that is the one that he's looked at and just went, I want to do that race. And I'm sure there'd be no problem getting him a drive somewhere if they could just sort of come up with a way of sort of. I don't know what the schedule is, because I mean basically if you have a look at the sort of the schedule for Radio Le Mans, he was at the
Mm.
He was at the Historics on the weekend, where unfortunately we
Yeah.
lost one of the classic Group C Peugeots, the same sort of model that
Oh
Jeff
no.
Brabham drove, and
No, no,
it was badly,
no, no, tie. Oh,
badly
okay.
damaged. Thankfully, the driver was not badly injured, but it was a big whack, and I'm not sure about the future of that because the
Hmm.
tub was very badly damaged. But great racing, another Peter Auto thing, and the good news is that all the Peter Auto historic meetings are all going to be live streamed this year. So that'll be things
Oh.
like Le Grand Prix de l'Age d'Or, which I've been to lucky enough to be been to twice now, once at Montleray and once at Dijon. So that's at Dijon. You'll have the Le Mans Classic, of course, is running
That's
this
this
year
year?
as well. That's
Yeah,
this year.
because the Classic Le Mans
Really
runs,
wanted to go.
yeah, Classic Le Mans runs alternative years.
Yeah, yeah.
So hang on, are they all? Do they alternate with historic Monaco? Do I have that in my head?
Yes, I think yes,
Yeah.
I think so. I think because that's every couple of years as well. So
Hmm.
I think they do. Also, I think the Le Grand Prix de l'Age d'Or also is there. So I think the deal is in terms of France. They have 1 year they have the Grand Prix de l'Age d'Or, and then the second year
It's
they
Classic
have
Le
Le Mans
Mans.
Classic. But as I've said before, every time we've been to Le Mans, just everybody keeps saying, all the locals just keep saying, "Oh, you must come back for the Classic. The Classic is amazing." The thing was, it used to be this really thing that no one sort of knew about, and they'd get, oh, it's really quiet. You get 25, 30,000 people turn up. It's a really relaxed atmosphere. I think the
Thirty
last one they
thousand
had,
relaxed.
yeah, they had about 170,000 people turn up on
100.
race day. So so that's
They get
changed.
they get enormous grids. They're they're like 50 to 60 or up to 80 car grids in the six echelons that run through the official historic Le Mans, and then on top of that, you have other categories as well. Like Group C will have a run there as well in their own tranche, and then you've got some years it'll be like I think an all Jaguar race is relatively common, and sometimes they'll have something like an old Porsche race or something, and um, yeah,
And also
the
the thing is
quality.
the car show. It's a bit like sort of Phillip Island. The car show that you get inside, certainly at Montleray for the Grand Prix, but also Montleray in particular, the car show, and also they have a swap meet as well. I could have, if I'd have I could have spent some serious money in terms of excess baggage, bringing back all sorts of wonderful, posters from 1960s and 1970s, French race meetings at Paul Ricard and all the rest of it, and all the places, and at Rouen, and just looked at it and said, oh, if I bring that, I'm not going to, how am I going to get this home? Bits of car badges and all
Yeah.
sorts of wonderful things, and amazing food and great atmosphere. And Peter
Mon-
Auto do a fabulous. I'd love Peter Auto. In fact, I said this to Peter Peters when we met him some years ago. I would love him at some stage to consider staging some sort of meeting in Australia. It would be a huge shake-up for historic racing down here for some people. They would be very upset about it, but it'd be good because they've just got a really relaxed attitude, and it's a celebration, and it's fun, and it's a party, and yeah, great stuff.
Get the Shaheen family on board and maybe add that to the calendar at the Bend.
Yes, yeah, it would be very well. Seeing that they're not going to have an Asian Le Mans Series race, I mean that was a bit disappointing. They announced
Mm.
that a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of people thought that, oh yes, well now things have opened up again. Everybody will go back to everybody
Well,
will
Asia
go
Le
back to
Mans,
there. But no, it's become
yes,
so popular, and like in the Middle East now, and particularly
yeah.
for European, for that to come out for that, a couple of weeks, they've added Sepang back in again. But I thought they might try and do Sepang, or do the Bend, then Sepang, then the break, and then to the Middle East, because the last thing I heard that the Asian Le Mans organisers were very keen to bring back the Bend, and also obviously the Shaheen family were very keen
Mm.
to bring it back. But the problem there might have been the proximity with the Adelaide 500. Could have been like, it's going to come sort of the week before or the week after Adelaide, for the 500. May not get much of a crowd there, even though they're two totally different audiences. But
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, well, I think yes, we should mention. I don't know. We mentioned last. I don't know if we mentioned it
Oh,
last one
yeah.
there, but yeah, Eddie Jordan has unfortunately lost his battle with cancer. He sort of said, sort of late last year that he was that it hit and wasn't really expected to survive. But he was still doing stuff right up to the end. He was still doing podcasts. They put up put up his last podcast where he was basically was insulting and abusing David Coulthard as per usual. Um, great guy, very funny, very entertaining, very honest and straightforward sort of guy, and everybody who had the privilege of knowing him and working with him seemed to have nothing but absolute praise for him, and that Jordan, the Lucky Striker, is still one of the best looking Formula One cars ever built. So
Yeah, that 1991, the first Jordan. Yeah,
yeah,
that was Gary Anderson, who designed that
mm,
car, who'd also penned, if memory serves, the Spa Formula Holdens only a couple of years before that. Um, and yeah, and Anderson and Jordan made quite the combination. They spent a lot of Anderson spent a lot of years with Jordan, and of course they had some great results over the years.
yeah,
Like a lot of attention gets focused on the Schumacher debut at Spa in 1991, but uh, uh, they pushed pretty hard in the late 90s when they had the Mugen Honda power plant on board. They were right up at the pointy end, and Damon Hill won a. They memorably had a 1-2 at the Belgian Grand Prix. Where, Damon Hill and I think it was Jean Alesi was the number two driver that came in the silver medal position that weekend, and that was a damp weekend. One of Damon Hill's best drives. He's actually, you look over Damon Hill's history, and some of his wet race skills are perhaps understated. How good he was in the wet. I mean, he had to compete with Schumacher for attention in that regard. But yeah, Jordan and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, of course, was a long time
yeah,
driver for Jordan as well, and he got some. I think he may have gotten a victory for them as well. And Ralph Schumacher was another driver who got picked up there. I remember Andre de Cesaris towards the end of his career had a great season with Jordan in their first season. That was but yeah, and Eddie's one maybe the most Irish person in the history of motorsport. The most Irishman. And you remember some of those little tricky things, like when the team was sponsored by a tobacco company for several years, and they'd go to some tracks where some races where the tobacco sponsorship was banned, so they came up with concepts like bitten and hisses and snake themed the
yeah,
car, and
yes, yeah,
that was they had some great people there, and and of course the team continues to today. They're now back green again, like they were in their very
yes.
first year in the Aston Martin colours. And
Yeah,
it was,
so a great character. Of course, a muso himself. I mean, you mentioned Damon Hill. Damon played in his band as well. Damon played guitar in his band. Eddie was a drummer, and had a few sort of racing drivers in various band lineups over the years. So yeah, top bloke.
I suppose Damon Hill was always going to be a guitarist, considering he's a lookalike of George Harrison.
George Harrison, yes, very much so. Yeah.
'Cause,
Now, obviously, Doc isn't here this week, so in terms of two-wheel stuff, we don't have a lot. But Paul is pointing out that the Australian Superbike Championships are at Sydney Motorsport Park this weekend. So if you're looking for something to watch, they'll be on SBS as per usual, I would imagine. Also coming up this weekend, locally down here, the next round of the Victorian State Circuit Racing Championship out at Melbourne's Calder Park. Also, I just point out we had some news we were sort of we were hoping to announce at the last Fast Friday at Calder Park regarding some big news about the future out there. That's been announced now, and the news is that Summit Racing, the American-based sort of speed shop and car accessories company, have got behind a dedicated Victorian Roll Racing Championship, which is going to be held. First round is going to be held on April 14th. So roll racing is huge. There was, like I said, after the last meeting, there was like a ridiculously large crowd there. I mean, if they got even a quarter of that this weekend for the state series, they'd be absolutely delirious. There would have been close to 8 to 10,000 people in terms of spectators. It was massive. So it's very, very popular. It's a very young crowd. It's a bit like the drifting situation. So they're going. Yeah, so they're going. That's going to be coming up. It starts on April the 14th. But this weekend out at Calder Park, you do have the Victorian State Championship, and also this weekend, both Saturday and Sunday, the annual historic Rob Roy is going to run, and that's something that they've been working on a lot over the past few years, sort of bringing it up to sort of more of a Goodwood style celebration in terms of they're encouraging people to dress in period in sort of 50s and 60s clothes. They've had some they had a good crowd last year. Haven't really checked what the weather's like, but I think certainly the rest of this week here in Melbourne is going to be fine and sort of fairly mild, sort of in the low to mid 20s. So hopefully that'll continue over the weekend, and we'll get a good weekend out of there. So that's up at the Rob Roy Hill Climb at Smith's Gully. It's a bit of a place to go to. It's quite a nice drive if you've got the time to sort of cruise in and stop at a few sort of wineries and some of the little towns along the way. It's fabulous, but it'll be a really good weekend. Not sure if Doc and I are going to get up there. I know that Doc's spoken to them about going up there, but once again, a lot of it's to do with health and wealth is part of the problem. Oh yes, and of course, if you talk about a crowd and talk about traffic chaos, the Avalon Air Show this weekend, $65 to park in the paddock 1 kilometre away from there. So $165, $100 to get in, and then and I noticed that Avalon Raceway put out a thing, because obviously they're very close, and apparently a lot of people they used to open up Avalon Raceway, and people would sit in the grandstand at Avalon Raceway because and obviously see the not
that's
allowed.
just cheeky.
Yeah, well, they're cheeky enough that they've been closed down. I don't know how this has been managed, but they've blocked off all the roads, and the Drew brothers have had to say, "Sorry, guys, ain't going to happen this year. You can't get we can't let anybody in. The road access has been blocked off, and we can't there. So if you want to go, there is public transport down. I think it goes to Lara, and then you get a bus back, but it's always absolute chaos getting in and out of the place. And if you, as I said, you would not get me in a million miles there. That would frighten the. I hate planes flying overhead, especially low. And I've seen too many YouTube channels of air crash tragedy. 75 people die in fiery plane crash as jet fighter plummets into crowd. It's like, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but they're all Russian planes that do that.
And there is a Russian plane here this year. I believe that it's a new fighter, a new Gee Whiz Super Duper fighter, very manoeuvrable. They were raving about it. So, so we'll have a look at that. Was
It
that?
didn't happen this year,
Well,
but so I won't invite you on the Sunday to the Grand Prix because they have a. I'm not aficionado of planes, but they have a military plane that's quite big and flies low over our stand.
I would have been
So
one of the C-17 Globemaster 3s that live up
yeah, I
here at
think
Amberley,
that sounds
RAF
good.
Amberley.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've had the of course the FA-18s and a few other things. I mean, they're amazing to watch. They're a stunning thing to look at, but I do freak out every time. Paul's saying that Speedway used to open the car park for a gold coin donation. Um, the old Geelong roads, the bus route from Lara Station, planes are not permitted to. Yeah, planes aren't permitted to fly over. Sometimes the planes decide to do what they want to do without troubling anybody else. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot safer than it used to be, but still, it would still freak me out. I know Richard Outram, our regular on the program. Richard's a huge plane nut, and he's been down quite a few times over the years and absolutely loved it. We actually did get accredited media accreditation one year, never
Hmm.
got down there, which I sort of regret now because a couple of people who did get down there said, "Oh, yeah, they let us walk on. It was on the Thursday or something. They let us on walk around the planes and they showed us all these things. It was like, oh, it would have been a great story, but anyway, as I said, Rob Roy this weekend and Calder Park, they're the two sort of things happening. I think Calder Park will be live streamed. Not sure about Rob Roy. They do have real trouble. We were looking at doing some stuff from there, and it's very, very hard to get a signal out of there. But somebody said they were working on it. We did the live stream. We helped them out. Doc and I helped them out last year. And I think they wanted us to do it again, sort of thing. But they spoke to Doc, but they didn't get in touch with me. And I think they've found somebody else to sort of do it now and all the rest of it. So I'm not, as I said, not sure whether we will go down there. Paul's also saying the grandstands in the public are a lot further back than they were in previous years. But anyway, let's call it.
In,
Let's quit it there. We've got through the hour. Anything quickly at your end, Mark?
oh yeah, IndyCar, of course, they had round two on the weekend.
Right.
Alex Palou won again. Will Power climbed from the back of the grid to finish sixth. But the talking point was after Scott McLaughlin and Devlin DiFrancesco had a collision on the warm-up lap, and they then had an exchange of opinions in front of the cameras, and it was fruity, shall we say. So if you like a bit of Billy Connolly style language, go and look up what Scotty and Devlin had to say to each other. A couple of big GT enduros were on in Europe
Mm.
over the weekend. The opening round of the Nürburgring Langstrecke series was one, and and Porsche swept all before them. The Falcon Tires team had a 1-2 victory, and Manthey with the Grello came home in third place. And also the Creventic 24H series had their opening round of their European series at Mugello. And that was. I've forgotten who won that race, but there was an Australian team running over there, and shout out to Axel Donaldson and Darren Curry, racing their Camaro-bodied IRC GT in the GTX category, racing against the two French Vortex V8s. Unfortunately, both races, 12 hours, Magello, but it's an
Yeah,
odd format
split.
where
Yeah.
it's they do 7 hours on Saturday and 5 hours on Sunday, in basically a format not dissimilar to the original Adelaide 500 format for method of Australian comparison. But yeah, didn't go well for Axel and Darren, unfortunately. But they finished both races, even though they had to do extensive repairs. I think in both races actually. I haven't seen much of the Sunday race. But they Axel did have a bit of a crash on the Saturday race that saw them on the sidelines for a little bit. But yep, shout out to both of them. They both finished both races, got points in both races, and yeah, they were fresh off having won the GTX Championship in the Middle East Trophy Series that was run at the start of the year with the IRC GT. So yeah, continuing to do great things overseas in that car. As shout out to, of course, to Danny Studdard and Jeff Taunton and all the other people associated with ISE and Mark Innovate for H Cars
And Jeff
and
Taunton
Mark
was
Cars. Yeah,
Jeff Taunton, of course, won the weekend overall for the sports sedans, first round of the National
he
Sports
did.
Sedan
Yeah.
Series. So I did watch a bit of that as well. There's just so much motorsport. It's quite, it's absolutely crazy the amount of motorsport that you could watch over the weekend. I originally went to look at the 12-hour. That's what I sort of went to hunt down, and then I saw the historic meeting and sort of thought, oh, I wonder what. Oh, they're streaming that, and I turned on and saw the Group C cars and went, oh, I'll watch that. And then they said, and the next race will be classic touring cars. And then they mentioned, they said the magic word, RS 3100 Capri. And I went, right, that's it. I'm here. I'm here for the weekend. This is where I am. So yeah, it was a great week. It's just so much. We are really blessed at the moment. I mean, with the way, if you have a look around this weekend, if you want to watch Colder, watch Colder. If you want to watch something from, if you want to watch the Superbikes, you can watch the Superbike. There's just, yeah. Anyway, if you want to, by the way, if you want to watch some great music tomorrow night, the first actual episode of our new weekly motorsport, music show. I'm going to do that all the time. The tune up. And the show is going to, like, if you want to see once again behind the scenes live, 9 o'clock tomorrow night, we've got an amazing band called the Kitty Hawks. It's a 7-piece Melbourne ska band. They are absolutely they are just incredible. They are just brilliant. Just come back from touring internationally. They're about to head off again for a European tour. So they're doing our show, and I think they've got one gig in Melbourne coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and then they go straight back to. And I know they're doing a festival in Germany, and then they're performing in England in July. So they're a great band, as I said, 7-piece sort of ska punk band called the Kitty Hawks. Just really entertaining, musically brilliant. And there tomorrow night, you will see the actual show starts first week of April on Channel 31, Friday nights at 8 p.m. That's the tune-up, so keep an eye out on that. So that's what sort of the in-pit lane, sort of what the in-pit lane crew are doing at the moment, rather than doing shows about motorsport, which is a bit of a shame. But it's nice to do something, different. But yeah, and it's certainly I must say it's in terms of raising sponsorship and getting guests, it's a way damn sight easier than doing a motorsport show. I can tell you. Okay, everybody, we'll see you. Speaking of doing motorsport shows, we're going to do this one again, same time next week. We'll talk about all the things that happen on the weekend. Depending on if I go to Calder, we might talk about that. If we go to Rob Roy, we'll probably talk about that. If we stay at home and watch stuff on television, we'll talk about that too.
Tapo Supercars, I think, is this weekend.
No.
No,
No,
weekend after.
No, that's another week away.
April
Okay.
11th.
All
April
right.
the 11th.
Oh.
Yeah. So
My bad. Oh, and Japanese Grand Prix still a week away as well.
Another week away as well. So they've got at least a bit of a break until they head to Suzuka. So that'll be great. And once again in our time zone, which is fantastic. So we're really lucky. I mean, we've got for the next couple of years at least, we've got quite a few. The start of the season is pretty much all in our time zone, which is fantastic. Okay, everybody. We're going to end this broadcast now. I'm going to press the little red button that says end broadcast. And if the technology works, we will drift off into the electronic ether. So thanks, everyone. Thanks to all the regulars for joining us again. Really appreciate it. We'll catch you next week for Full Course Yellow. Until then, from me, Peter, and Mark, we'll catch you later. Bye, everybody.